Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it, then let's evaluate together. The executive office at Wolf Enterprises was a goddamn fortress. All glass and steel perched high above Chicago's chaos, where the city's neon lights bled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the room in streaks of electric blue and gold. Ava Wells stood in the center, her breath shallow, her skin tingling under the weight of Julian Wolf's stare. The air was heavy with the scent of cedar and bourbon, the faint hum of a jazz track Miles Davis, probably slipping from hidden speakers, weaving through the distant roar of the city below. Her thin silk blouse, a borrowed piece from her roommate, clung to her curves, shimmering under the light, her dark skin glowing like polished ebony. Julian was too close, his black button-up open at the collar, gray eyes slicing through her like they could read every scar she'd ever hidden. He stepped forward, and Ava didn't back down. She wasn't the type to shrink. Not anymore. His hand hovered near her waist, not touching, but close enough to make her pulse hammer in her throat. "You're fucking trouble," he murmured, voice low and rough, like he'd been gargling whiskey and regret. The soft wail of a saxophone curled through the room, mixing with the faint buzz of the city's pulse. Ava tilted her chin, lips curling into a challenge. "And you're begging for it." Before she could blink, his mouth was on hers, hungry, relentless. Her hands flew to his shoulders, fingers digging into the crisp fabric, feeling the heat of his skin underneath. His hands slid to her hips, pulling her against him, the silk of her blouse sliding against his shirt, sparking like a live wire. Their breathing filled the room sharp, ragged, desperate, drowning out the jazz, the city, everything. Her nails grazed his neck, drawing a low groan that sent a shiver straight to her core. The kiss deepened, all teeth and need, her body arching into him, the neon light casting their shadows in a frantic dance of shadow and flame. But then Ava froze, hands flattening against his chest. "Wait," she gasped, pulling back, lips tingling, heart pounding so loud it echoed in her ears. Julian's eyes were wild, breath uneven. But he stopped instantly, hands dropping to his sides. "This doesn't mean you own me," she said, voice shaky but sharp, like a blade. His gaze softened, not with anger, but with something deeper, respect, maybe, or a want that scared her more than lust ever could. "I know," he said, voice raw, stepping back like it took every ounce of him to do it. "But you're here." Ava turned away, chest heaving, trying to ignore the way her body screamed to close the distance again. How the hell had she ended up here, tangled up with a man like Julian Wolf a few months earlier? It all started with a storm that wasn't supposed to mean shit. Ava Wells was at her wit's end, soaked to the bone, curled against the cold metal frame of a service entrance behind a Chicago high-rise. The rain came down in sheets, relentless, the kind that didn't give a fuck about your plans. She was 25, a temp worker scraping by, her dreams of being a writer buried under the weight of her brother Isaiah's school fees and a landlord who didn't care about late rent. That day, she'd bombed a job interview at some fancy-ass law firm, the kind where the receptionist looked at her like she was trash and the hiring manager didn't even glance at her resume. "Not the profile we're looking for," he'd said, and she'd walked out into the storm, missing the last subway, collapsing when her legs gave out. She didn't know how long she'd been there, shivering, barely conscious, her coat useless against the icy wind. Her mind was a blur rain, cold, nothing until the door opened. And he was there. Julian Wolf. 35 billionaire CEO of Wolf Enterprises, wasn't supposed to be home. His flight from Tokyo had landed early, and he'd told his driver to skip the office and head to his penthouse. He needed silence, whiskey, solitude. Instead, he found her half dead, lips blue, shaking so hard it looked like her bones might snap. He knelt beside her, checking her pulse, his fingers warm against her freezing skin. "Fuck," he muttered, voice low, urgent. She was in hypothermic shock, barely breathing. He didn't call for help, too slow. He scooped her up, arms cradling her like she weighed nothing, her head limp against his chest, and carried her inside. The penthouse was all marble and glass, lit by a gas fireplace that threw flickering shadows. He laid her on a leather chaise, cursing under his breath, and started unbuttoning her coat. It was useless, soaked through, every layer clinging to her like a second skin. Julian hesitated, jaw tight. Then his training, some half-remembered first aid course, kicked in. Strip the wet clothes, dry the skin, get her warm. He peeled off her sweater, revealing a thin tank top, transparent against her chest. No bra. He swallowed hard, looked away, whispering apologies she couldn't hear. His hands worked fast, clinical, peeling off the tank, revealing pale curves, goose-bumped skin, a faint scar on her hip. He wrapped her in a heated blanket, cranked the thermostat, and sank beside her, pulse hammering like he'd run a marathon. She stirred minutes later, eyes fluttering open, glassy, confused. Then she saw him, breath catching. So did his. "Where am I?" she whispered, voice threadbare. "You collapsed outside," he said, gentle but firm. "I brought you in. You were freezing. I had to get you warm." She looked down, saw the blanket, and her face shifted from confusion to horror, yanking it tighter. "Did you see?" He held her gaze, steady. "Only what I needed to save you." Silence, heavy, fragile. Then she whispered, not accusing, but like she was confessing. "No one's ever seen me like that. Julian, a man who'd built empires and broken hearts, felt something crack inside him. You're safe," he said, voice softer than he meant. "I'm Julian. Julian Wolf." Her eyes widened, recognition flickering. "Wolf. Like Wolf Enterprises." He nodded. Faint. "The same." Ava's lips parted, a bitter laugh escaping. Of course. Only her fucked-up luck would land her half-naked in the penthouse of Chicago's coldest billionaire. She didn't know what to say, just pulled the blanket tighter, heart pounding. He didn't push, didn't ask her name, just watched her with eyes that didn't judge, didn't want, just saw. And that scared the shit out of her. A week later, Ava was at a new temp job, executive assistant at Wolf Enterprises, a gig her advisor had pushed her into without mentioning the company name. She needed the cash, said yes, and walked into the gleaming tower in downtown Chicago, heart-hitching when she realized where she was. The odds of seeing him again were slim, she told herself, until she stepped off the elevator and saw him in the lobby, speaking to a group of suits, their eyes locked. And every second of that night, his hands, the blanket, her shivers came flooding back. He raised an eyebrow. Recognition. Nothing more. She dropped her gaze and walked past. But inside, something cracked open. Ava Wells was used to being invisible. Growing up black in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, she'd learned early to keep her head down, to avoid the taunts, the stares, the hands that didn't ask permission. Her mom left when she was 13, her dad drank himself into oblivion, and Ava raised her brother Isaiah, working every gig she could: waitress, cleaner, cashier, to keep him fed and in school. Writing was her escape, scribbled poems on her phone about women like her. But dreams didn't pay bills. That night in the storm, Julian Wolfe had seen her, and it fucked her up. Days into the job, she was filing contracts in the records room when Julian appeared, leaning against the door frame, suit sharp, eyes steady. "You work too damn much," he said, voice low, like he was sharing a secret. She didn't look up, fingers moving faster. "And you notice too damn much." He stepped closer, shadow falling over her. "You kept that blanket." Her jaw tightened, heat creeping up her neck. "Don't flatter yourself." It was warm. His lips twitched, a ghost of a smile. "You could have tossed it. You didn't." She glared, heart pounding, trying to shake the way his voice wrapped around her. "What do you want?" "Wolfe, I'm not your charity case, and I'm sure as hell not your side piece." He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he'd die to solve. "I don't want anything from you," he said, voice softer, almost dangerous. "I just want to be near you." The words hit her like a punch, raw and uninvited. She turned away, busying herself with the files, hands shaking. "Fuck off," she muttered, but it lacked heat, and they both knew it. That night, Ava met Cass at a dive bar in South Side, the kind with sticky tables and a jukebox stuck on Stevie Wonder. Cass, all braids and bold lipstick, slid a beer across the table. "Spill, girl. Who's got you looking like you seen a ghost?" Ava groaned, recounting the storm, the penthouse, the way Julian kept showing up at work. "He's not creeping, exactly. He's just there, like he sees me, and I don't know what to do with that." Cass raised an eyebrow. "A rich white guy like that?" "He's playing you, Ava. They fuck you up, then bounce." Ava stared at her beer, foam swirling under the bar's dim lights. "He's not like that. At least, I don't think so." Cass leaned forward, serious. "You're playing with fire, girl, and you're the one who's going to get burned. Across town." Julian sat in his penthouse, a glass of bourbon untouched on the desk. Jonathan, his assistant, a sharp-tongued guy with a knack for calling bullshit, leaned against the wall. "You're acting weird. Boss, this girl's got you fucked up." Julian didn't look up. "She's not like anyone else." Jonathan snorted. "Yeah, 'cause you found her half dead in a storm. That's some knight in shining armor shit. But watch it, Evelyn's sniffing around, asking about your new assistant." Julian's jaw tightened. Evelyn, his old fling and current rival, was a shark who smelled blood a mile away. "Let her sniff," he said. "She won't find anything." But he knew better. Ava wasn't just a distraction, she was a goddamn reckoning, and he wasn't sure he could stay away. The next day, Ava was sorting files in the records room, the air thick with the smell of old paper and ink. When Julian walked in, "You shouldn't be here," he said, voice low, standing too close. She didn't look up, heart pounding. "Then kick me out." He leaned in, shadow falling over her. "I'm not that stupid." She turned, eyes narrowing. Why the fuck are you doing this? Showing up, acting like you care. He didn't blink, because I do, and it's scaring the shit out of me. She stared, the weight of his words sinking in. That night, she found a package at her desk, a first edition of Maya Angelou's Still I Rise. No note, just his initials, J.W. She knew it was him, and for the first time, she wasn't sure if she was pissed or falling. Hey, if Ava and Julian's sparks got you hooked, smash that subscribe button to catch what's next. Drop a comment should Ava trust this guy or tell him to fuck off for good. Let's talk. The records room at Wolf Enterprises was a fucking crypt, all dim fluorescence and stacks of old files that smelled like dust and ink. Ava Wells moved through it like a shadow, sorting contracts, her hands stained with toner, her curls tied back with a scrunchie that was one tug away from snapping. Her dark skin glistened under the flickering lights, her blouse clinging to her curves from the humidity of the unventilated space. It was a Thursday, just past 6 p.m., and the Chicago office was winding down, the hum of the city filtering through the walls, mixing with the faint drone of a jazz track someone had left playing in the break room. Julian Wolf was in his usual haunt, leaning against the doorframe, his tailored black suit sharp as a blade, gray eyes tracking her like she was the only thing in his sterile world worth seeing. He'd been showing up like this for weeks now, ever since that damn storm, ever since he'd peeled her soaked clothes off and looked at her like she wasn't just a nobody from Bed-Stuy. He didn't say much, just watched, not creepy, but intense, like he was trying to crack a code written in her silences. Ava slammed a file drawer shut, patience thinner than the cheap paper she was handling. You gonna keep staring like a fucking stalker, or you got something to say, she snapped, not looking at him. A passing intern glanced over, but Julian's lips twitched, the closest he got to a smile. You're avoiding me, he said, voice low, like he was calling her out on a secret. She turned, hands on her hips, her Brooklyn accent sharp. Avoiding you. You're the one haunting my damn job, like you don't have $1 billion to play with. He stepped closer, shadow falling over her, the faint scent of bourbon and cedar cutting through the room's musty air. You kept that book, he said, eyes locking onto hers. Her jaw tightened, heat creeping up her neck. The copy of Still I Rise he'd left on her desk, the one she'd poured her heart into, scribbling poems about women like her black, proud, unbroken. Don't flatter yourself, she said, voice sharp. I needed somewhere to write. His gaze didn't waver. Steady, unnerving. You could have thrown it out. You didn't. She glared, heart pounding, trying to shake the way his voice wrapped around her like smoke. What do you want, Wolf? I'm not your charity case, and I'm sure as hell not your side piece. He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he'd die to solve. I don't want anything from you, he said, voice softer now, almost dangerous. I just want to be near you. The words hit her like a punch, raw and uninvited. She turned away, grabbing another file, hands shaking. Fuck off, she muttered. But it lacked heat, and they both knew it. That night, after her shift, Ava stepped into the humid Chicago air, the smell of rain and fried dough from a nearby food cart heavy in the darkness. Her hoodie was no match for the drizzle, clinging to her shoulders, her sneakers squeaking with every step. She was halfway to the bus stop when she heard footsteps behind her. She spun, hand on the pepper spray in her pocket, but it was him, Julian, his coat slick with rain, hair damp against his forehead, looking like he'd walked through a storm just to find her. What the fuck? Man, she snapped, breath visible in the cool air. You following me now? He stopped a few feet away, hands in his pockets, the streetlight casting sharp angles across his face. You shouldn't walk alone this late, he said, voice calm but firm, like he wasn't asking permission. She laughed, sharp and bitter. I've been walking these streets since I was a kid. I don't need a damn escort. He didn't argue, just fell into step beside her, keeping his distance. The rain pattered against her hood, the city's hum a low growl in the background. They didn't talk much, just walked, the silence weirdly comfortable, like they'd done this 100 times. At the corner near her apartment, a rundown building that smelled of curry and laundry, she stopped, the neon glow from a liquor store sign painting her face in reds and blues. Why are you doing this? She asked, voice softer, almost lost in the rain. He looked at her, water dripping from his hair, eyes softer than she'd ever seen. Because you make the silence feel like something I can bear, he said, like it was a confession he hadn't meant to make. Her breath caught, pulse hammering. She wanted to laugh it off, to tell him to fuck himself. But the way he looked at her like she was the only thing keeping him grounded made her pause. You're crazy, she said finally, turning away. Maybe. He called after her, but he didn't follow. She felt his eyes on her until she slipped inside, her heart a mess she didn't want to name. The next evening, Ava was in the records room, sorting through a stack of old contracts, when the door creaked open. She turned, expecting an intern, but it was Julian. Jacket off, sleeves rolled, standing there like he owned the fucking air. The fluorescents flickered, casting their shadows in sharp relief, the faint hum of the city seeping through the walls. I needed quiet, he said, voice even, like it was a perfectly normal place for a billionaire to hang out. She snorted, not looking up. There's a whole damn penthouse upstairs for that. His mouth curved, just a fraction, but no one breathes like you do in the penthouse. Her breath stilled, heart slamming against her ribs. He stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that the air between them pulsed. That night, he said, voice lower, You think I forgot? She shook her head, voice tight. I think you pretended it didn't matter. He didn't blink. I never pretend. I just don't let on. She stepped back, instinct, not fear. Pulse thundering in her ears. You're my boss, she said, voice barely steady. He tilted his head. Technically, I'm not. You're assigned to legal. But you're in my building, in my orbit. And I can't stop noticing you. The words hung there, heavy, dangerous. Why didn't you say anything before she asked, throat tight? He exhaled, slow, like it cost him. Because the moment I say it, I don't know how to stop. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Say what she whispered. His eyes darkened, voice low, deliberate. That I remember every second of peeling wet fabric from your skin, not with desire, with dread, because I didn't know if you'd survive. And then you opened your eyes, and I saw something I hadn't seen in years. What she asked, barely audible. A woman who didn't want anything from me. Not my money, not my name, just warmth. The air crackled, her chest tight. She should have walked away, told him to fuck off, But instead, she stepped closer, close enough to smell the bourbon on his breath, close enough to see the pulse at his throat. "Your trouble," he murmured, hand hovering near her cheek, not touching, waiting. "Good," she said, voice barely a whisper. "I'm not your fucking fantasy." He moved first, closing the gap, lips brushing hers, soft at first, testing, then deeper, hungry. Her hands found his chest, pushing then pulling, nails scraping through the fabric. The fluorescents flickered, casting their shadows in a jagged dance, her skin glowing under the harsh light. Their breathing was loud, ragged, drowning out the city's hum, the faint creak of the floor as they shifted. His hand slid to her lower back, pulling her against him, the heat of his touch burning through her blouse. Her body arched, craving the way he made her feel seen, wanted, alive. The files on the table rattled as her hip brushed them, the faint scent of ink mixing with their uneven breaths. But Ava pulled back, chest heaving, lips swollen. "This doesn't mean I'm yours," she said, voice shaky but firm. Julian's eyes were wild, but he nodded, stepping back, hands clenched like he was fighting himself. "I know," he said, voice raw. "But you're here." She glared, trying to ignore the fire in her veins. "Don't get cocky." "Wolf?" He didn't smile, just watched her, like she was the only thing that mattered in his fucked up world. The next day, Ava met Cass at their usual spot, a greasy diner in Southside with neon signs and coffee that tasted like regret. Cass slid into the booth, braids swinging, a plate of fries between them. "You look like you got fucked 6 ways to Sunday," she said, popping a fry in her mouth. Ava choked on her soda. "Jesus, Cass, no. I don't know what I'm doing." Cass leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Spill. You've been dodging me, and now you're glowing like you kissed a billionaire in a file room." Ava groaned, recounting the storm, the job, the kiss that nearly burned her alive. "He's intense, Cass. Not creepy. But it's like he sees me, and I'm scared I'll disappear if he stops." Cass's expression softened, but her voice was firm. "Rich white guys like him, they don't stick around. Ava, he's playing you, and you're the one who's gonna get burned." Ava stared out the window, the diner's neon buzzing, casting red light across her face. "I know," she said quietly, "but what if I'm tired of being invisible across town?" Julian was in his penthouse, a glass of bourbon untouched on the desk. Jonathan leaned against the wall, scrolling through his phone. "You're fucked up." "Boss," he said, not looking up. "This girl's got you acting unwise." Julian didn't deny it. "She's not like anyone else." Jonathan snorted. "Yeah, 'cause you saved her ass in a storm. That's some hero complex shit. But heads up, Evelyn's digging. She's got a blog lined up, sniffing about your temp assistant." Julian's jaw tightened. Evelyn was a problem, but not his focus. His focus was Ava, the way she moved, the way she called him out, the way her kiss felt like a fucking reckoning. He wasn't sure if it was a gift or a curse. A few days later, Ava was filing reports in the legal department, the air thick with the smell of coffee and toner, when she overheard 2 assistants whispering. "That blog's saying, Wolf's got a thing for some temp. Bet she's just a gold digger." Her stomach dropped. the words slicing like a knife. She kept her head down, but her hands shook. That night, she got a text from Isaiah got in a fight at school. Need to talk. Her world was closing in, and Julian's presence, his fucking help, was making it harder to stay invisible. She saw him in the hallway later, leaning against a wall, eyes on her like always. "You okay?" he asked, voice low, like he could see the storm in her head. She glared, voice sharp. "Your world's starting to fuck with mine." "Wolf, I can't afford that." He stepped closer, shadow falling over her. "I'm not letting them touch you," he said, voice fierce. "You're not theirs to judge." She wanted to believe him, but the whispers, the blog, the weight of her life, it was too much. "You don't get to decide that," she said, turning away, heart cracking. But as she walked off, she knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The penthouse was a fucking war zone tonight. All sleek glass and polished marble that screamed money but felt like a cage. Ava Wells stood in the center, fists balled, dark eyes blazing like they could burn Chicago to the ground. The neon glow from the city's skyline sliced through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting her in jagged streaks of blue and gold. Her curls wild, her hoodie slipping off one shoulder, exposing a curve of skin that shimmered under the dim light. Julian Wolfe leaned against a bar counter. Gray eyes locked on her. But his usual icy control was fraying, jaw tight, hands gripping a bourbon glass he hadn't touched. The air was thick, electric, like a storm ready to break. A muted jazz track. Coltrane, always fucking Coltrane, drifted from hidden speakers, its mournful notes clashing with the distant hum of traffic far below. Ava's voice cut through the silence, sharp and raw. "You knew this shit was coming, didn't you?" She held up her phone, screen glaring with a headline that made her stomach churn. "Billionaire's Bed-Stuy bet. Who's the mystery temp?" The article was a knife to the gut. No names, but plenty of poison. A blurry photo of her leaving the office. Hoodie up, head down, paired with lines like opportunist and temporary fling. The comments were a fucking slaughterhouse. Another black chick after his money. Bet she's just a quick fuck. Typical. Each word was a slap, dragging her back to the taunts of kids in Brooklyn. The "you don't belong" stares that followed her like ghosts. Julian's grip on the glass tightened, ice clinking, but his voice stayed calm, too damn calm. "I didn't know it had hit like this." Ava laughed, bitter, like shattered glass. "Bullshit. Wolf, you live in this world. You know how it works. People like me, we don't get to breathe without someone shitting on us." She stepped closer, sneakers scuffing the hardwood, voice rising. "You should have fucking warned me." He set the glass down, the clink sharp, and closed the distance between them. The scent of bourbon and cedar hit her, mixing with the faint sweat on her skin from storming across town to confront him. "I thought I could keep it contained," he said, low, edged with desperation. "I didn't want you to bolt." Ava's eyes narrowed, breath hitching. "Bolt. You think I'm scared of some gossip? I'm pissed because this is my life they're tearing apart, not your fancy-ass empire." His face hardened, not anger, but guilt. Raw and ugly. "I fucked up," he said, stepping closer, shadow swallowing her. "But I'm not letting them touch you." She shoved him, hard, palms slamming into his chest. He stumbled back, air escaping in a sharp huff, back hitting the wall with a dull thud. "You don't get it," she hissed, closing the gap. Face inches from his, voice trembling with rage. They're already touching me. Every word, every comment, it's my name, my face, my fucking story. And you just stand there like you can fix it with your goddamn money. Julian's eyes darkened, hands twitching like he wanted to reach for her, but didn't dare. "You're not theirs to judge," he said, voice rough, almost broken. He stopped. Word caught in his throat. Ava's breath hitched, anger crashing into something hotter, more dangerous. "Say it," she snapped, hands still on his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. "Say what I am to you." He didn't. Instead, he grabbed her wrists, not hard, but firm, pulling her against him. His lips crashed into hers, a kiss that was all fire and desperation, teeth clashing, tongues battling, like they were trying to burn the world away. Ava's hands fisted in his shirt, yanking him closer, nails digging through the fabric. The neon light pulsed through the windows, casting shadows and sharp, chaotic lines, her skin glowing under electric hues. Their breathing was loud, ragged, drowning out the jazz, the city, everything. His hands slid to her hips, lifting her onto the bar, bottles rattling as they shifted. The cool marble pressed against her thighs through her jeans, a stark contrast to the heat of his palms gripping her waist. Her hoodie rode up, exposing the curve of her lower back, and his fingers brushed it, sending a jolt through her. The fire in her veins roared, body arching into him, craving the way he made her feel seen, wanted, alive. His lips moved to her neck, leaving a trail of heat, the soft scrape of his stubble making her gasp, the faint clink of glassware mixed with their uneven breaths, neon light flickering like a heartbeat. "You're everything," he murmured against her skin, voice barely audible over the city's hum, hands pausing, grounding her in the chaos. But Ava froze, hands flattening against his chest. "Stop," she gasped, pulling back, lips swollen, heart pounding like a drum. Julian's eyes searched hers, wild but restrained, hands dropping instantly. "We can't do this," she said, sliding off the bar, legs shaky, voice cracking. "Not like this. Not when I'm falling apart." He nodded, jaw tight, like it took every ounce of control to stay still. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, voice raw, "but you need to know I see you. All of you." She turned away, chest heaving, his words sinking like stones. She wanted to believe him, but the world outside was screaming something else, and it was tearing her open. The next morning, Ava woke in her cramped Bed-Stuy apartment, the headline still burning in her mind. Her phone was a war zone, texts from Cass, a missed call from Isaiah, even a few unknown numbers she didn't dare touch. She ignored them, pulling on her hoodie and heading to work. The air smelled of damp concrete and fried grease from the street vendors, the morning sun harsh against her tired eyes. At Wolf Enterprises, she filed reports on autopilot, hands moving while her brain replayed the fight, the kiss, the way Julian's voice broke when he said he saw her. Cass caught her during a break, sliding into a staff room with 2 Cokes. "You look like shit," she said, tossing one to Ava. "Thanks," Ava muttered, slumping into a chair. Cass's braids were tied back, eyes sharp with worry. "Talk to me. Ava." This blog, it's fucking vicious. What's going on with you and Wolf? Ava stared at the can, the cold metal grounding her. I don't know. Last night, we fought, and then we kissed. Hard. Like we could burn it all down. Cass's eyebrows shot up. You hooked up in the middle of this mess. Ava groaned, rubbing her temples. Not exactly. I stopped it. I can't let him think he can kiss me and make this go away. Cass leaned back, sipping her Coke. Smart move, but real talk. You're in deep, girl. And with a guy like that, the world's gonna come for you. Those comments aren't just noise, they're knives. Ava's throat tightened. I know. It's like I'm back in Brooklyn, hearing kids say I'm not good enough because of my skin, my dad's drinking, and now it's the whole damn internet. Cass reached over, squeezing her hand. Fuck 'em. You're Ava Wells. You've been through worse than some online bullshit, but you gotta figure out, is he worth this? Ava didn't answer, but the question stuck, heavy as the city's humidity. At Wolf Enterprises headquarters, Julian was a storm in a tailored suit. He stormed into a board meeting, usual calm shattered, voice slicing through the room. This deal's a waste of time, he snapped, tossing a tablet on the table. We're chasing optics while someone's out there leaking lies. The suits flinched, but no one spoke. Jonathan trailed him back to his office, muttering, You're scaring the board. Boss? Julian ignored him, pouring a bourbon he didn't drink. Jonathan handed him a phone, found the leak. It's Evelyn. She's feeding that blog through a shell account, wants to make you look weak. Julian's eyes narrowed. Evelyn, his old fling. Now a rival with a vendetta, was playing dirty. She's fucking with Ava, he said, voice low, lethal. Jonathan shrugged. You gonna shut her down? Julian shook his head. Not yet. I need proof. But proof wasn't his real problem. It was Ava, her fire, her pain, the way she'd shoved him and kissed him like she was fighting for her life. He'd fucked up, not warning her about the vultures in his world, and now she was paying for it. His phone was silent. No texts, no calls, just the memory of her voice. You don't get it. He wanted to fix it. But how do you fix a world that breaks people like her for breathing that afternoon? Ava got a text from Isaiah. Got in trouble again. They might kick me out. Her stomach dropped. She'd thought Julian's debt payment would buy them time, but trouble kept coming. Relentless. She headed to the school after her shift, the city's noise swallowing her thoughts. In the principal's office, Isaiah sat, head down, caught fighting over some petty beef. I'm sorry. Ava, he muttered. Her heart sank, but she kept her voice steady. We'll fix it, kid. Back at the office, she overheard two co-workers whispering, That's the temp from the blog, right? Bet she's sleeping her way up. Her blood boiled, but she kept moving, head down. That night, she found an email from HR meeting tomorrow. Urgent. Attached was a screenshot of the article, with a note. Reputation risk. Her chest tightened. She didn't go home. She took the elevator to Julian's penthouse, anger clawing at her chest. When she stormed in, he was there, standing by the window, city lights haloing his frame. You paid my brother's school fees, she said. Voice low, shaking, holding up a notice she'd found in her mailbox. Behind my fucking back. He turned, face unreadable. I was trying to help. She stepped closer, eyes burning. You are trying to own me. Don't you get it? Every time you do this, You're telling me I'm not enough?" His jaw tightened, voice rough. "That's not what I'm saying." She laughed, bitter. "Then why does it feel like it I'm not your project?" "Julian, I'm not your fucking damsel." He stepped toward her, voice low, desperate. "I see you, Ava. More than anyone. But I can't watch you drown and do nothing." She shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "Then watch me swim, or get the hell out of my way." She turned to leave, heart cracking, but his voice stopped her. "Don't go." She paused, hand on the door, breath shaky. "I can't be your secret anymore," she said, and walked out. The city's roar swallowing her steps. Ava Wells' apartment was a fucking shithole. A cramped walk-up in Bed-Stuy that smelled of curry and mildew, with walls so thin you could hear the neighbors' fights like they were in the room. She stood in the middle of the living room, sneakers still wet from the Chicago rain, hoodie heavy on her shoulders like it could shield her from the world. The neon glow from the liquor store sign across the street bled through the cracked blinds, casting a sickly red light across the peeling linoleum. Her phone sat silent on the wobbly kitchen table. No texts, no calls, just the echo of her last words to Julian Wolfe. "I can't be your secret anymore." Her chest burned, like someone had ripped out her heart and left the wound raw. She'd stormed out of his penthouse an hour ago, the city's roar swallowing her steps, but the fight kept replaying his face when she called him out, the way his voice cracked when he said he saw her. She wanted to hate him, to torch the way he made her feel. But the truth was messier. Julian wasn't just some rich prick trying to buy her. He was the first person who'd looked at her like she was enough, and that scared the shit out of her. But paying her brother's school fees behind her back, that wasn't help. It was control, and it made her feel like the invisible black girl she'd fought so hard to leave behind. Her brother Isaiah shuffled in, his sneakers untied, face tight with worry. "School's on my ass again," he said, tossing his backpack on the couch. "They're saying I might get expelled if I don't shape up." Ava's stomach twisted. Isaiah didn't know about Julian's secret payment, and she wasn't about to drag him into this mess. Not now. "Isaiah," she said, voice sharp. He frowned, catching her vibe. "You good?" "Ava." She forced a nod, grabbing her bag. "I need air. I'll be back." She didn't stick around. She took the train to Union Station, then a bus to Wisconsin, to her aunt's lakeside cabin in a nowhere town near Lake Geneva. It was the only place she'd ever felt steady. A weathered shack where the world couldn't touch her. The ride was long. The hum of the engine and the soft snores of other passengers her only company. She stared out the window, the dark highway stretching like her thoughts, endless, uncertain. By the time she reached the cabin, it was past 2 a.m. The air was sharp with pine and lake water, the waves lapping against the shore like a heartbeat that wouldn't quit. Inside, the cabin was cold, the wood stove unlit, the faint smell of cedar and damp earth clinging to the walls. She dropped her bag, started a fire, and sank onto the rug, the glow of the flames casting shadows across the worn floor. Her notebook lay in her bag, untouched for weeks, but tonight, she pulled it out. Her pen moved without thought, scribbling a poem about a woman rising from ashes, her face fierce, unbowed. She called it enough, and for the first time in weeks, she felt like she was clawing something back herself. In Chicago, Julian Wolfe was falling apart. His penthouse, once a fortress of control, felt like a fucking tomb, the city's neon lights mocking him through the glass. He hadn't slept Hadn't eaten. Just stared at the copy of Still I Rise he'd given Ava, now sitting on his desk like a goddamn accusation. Her absence was a physical thing. A knife in his chest he couldn't pull out. He'd fucked up. Big time. Paying her brother's fees without asking, thinking he was helping when all he did was make her feel like she wasn't enough. Jonathan, his assistant, cornered him after a meeting where Julian had nearly bitten a board member's head off. "You're a fucking wreck." "Boss," Jonathan said, tossing a file on the desk. "This girl's got you unraveling." Julian glared, knuckles white around a pen. "It's not her. It's this shitstorm." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "Sure, but you didn't start losing it until she walked out. And FYI, Evelyn's doubling down. She's got another article queued, digging into Ava's family, her dad's drinking, her brother's fights, the whole mess. Julian's blood ran cold. Evelyn was a viper, and Ava was her prey. "Shut it down," he said, voice low, lethal. Jonathan nodded. "Already working on it. But you can't fix this with money or threats. Julian, you fucked up. You should have asked her." The words hit like a sledgehammer. Julian sank into his chair, leather creaking, mind replaying Ava's face, her fire, her pain, the way she'd called him out. He'd let her down, and now she was gone. He stood, pacing, skyline a blur outside. He wanted to chase her, to beg, but Jonathan's voice echoed. "You should have asked." For the first time, he realized love wasn't about fixing it, was about listening, standing still, letting her choose. He pulled out his phone, typed a message he didn't send. "I'm sorry. I'm trying." Instead, he called Marcus, his old friend, and the one person who'd seen him before the crash that took Elise. "I need to talk," he said, voice shaky. It was a start. In Wisconsin, Ava threw herself into the cabin, the lake, the words, days blurred mornings writing by the shore, afternoons helping at a local community center where poets and writers gathered to share their work. The center was a converted barn, all weathered wood and ink-stained tables, buzzing with laughter and the smell of coffee. The director, Lena, a black woman with a no-bullshit vibe, read Ava's poem and nodded. "You've got a voice. Girl," she said, "don't hold it back." Ava didn't. She poured her pain into Reclaim, writing poems about women like her mom, her grandma, Cass women who'd carried the world and still stood tall. One piece, a prose poem, was about a woman standing naked in a storm, not broken, but unbowed, her body a map of strength and scars. She titled it, Enough. The act of writing was like breathing again, each word pulling her back from the edge. But Julian haunted her. Late at night, when the waves were loud and the fire low, she'd sit by the window, the lake air cool against her skin, and think of him, his quiet intensity, the way he'd waited in the records room, the way his kiss felt like a fucking promise. She checked her phone once, saw a missed call from him, no voicemail. She didn't call back. Not yet. She talked to Cass over a crackly phone line, the wind howling outside. "You holding up?" Ava Cass asked, voice warm but worried. Ava sighed, wrapping a quilt around her shoulders, trying. "I needed space. You know, from him. From all that noise." Cass's laugh was soft. "You love him, don't you?" Ava's throat tightened. Yeah, but I need to love me first. Cass's voice was firm. Damn right. You're Ava Wells. You don't break. Back in Chicago, Julian made a move, but not his usual kind. He didn't call the press or sue Evelyn, that was too easy. Instead, he leaked proof of her shady tactics to a rival outlet, letting her own game bury her. The follow-up article tanked, her credibility shredded. He didn't do it for revenge. He did it because Ava deserved to breathe without vultures circling. But it wasn't enough. His penthouse was empty without her, her notebook gone, her presence no longer warming the sterile space. He found a pen she'd left, chewed and worn, and held it like it was the last piece of her he'd ever touch. Jonathan caught him staring at it one night. "You're pathetic." "Man," he said, half laughing. "Go get her." Julian shook his head. "She needs space. I'm not fucking that up again." Jonathan raised an eyebrow. "You're learning. That's new." Julian didn't answer, but he felt it a crack in the armor he'd worn since Elise died, since he built an empire to prove he was enough. He started talking to Marcus more, digging into the pain he'd buried Elise's laugh, the crash that ended it all, the guilt that defined him. Marcus, voice steady over the phone, said, "You're not that guy anymore. Julian, let her see you." He wasn't sure who he was, but for Ava, he'd try. A week later, Lena called Ava about a poetry reading at the community center. "Your work belongs here," she said. Ava hesitated, notebook heavy in her hands, but nodded. "I'm in." The reading was small, just locals and a few writers, but when she read enough on the barn's small stage, string lights casting a warm glow, she felt solid, like she wasn't just surviving, but living. Cass came up for the reading, hugging her tight. "Look at you, shining," she said, grinning. Ava laughed, lighter than it had been in weeks. "Trying to..." A local editor approached, intrigued by Reclaim. "This could go places," she said, handing Ava her card. "Come see me." Ava took it, mind spinning. Places meant Chicago, meant Julian, meant facing the life she'd left. Was she ready? That night, she sat by the fire, waves crashing outside, and pulled out her phone. No new messages, but she opened Julian's last text. "I'm here when you're ready." Her thumb hovered, then typed, "I'm figuring shit out. Don't hold your breath." She hit send, heart pounding, and turned off the phone. She wasn't running anymore, but she wasn't rushing back either. She was Ava Wells, and she was enough. The Wisconsin lake was a raw, quiet beast, all dark water and pine-shadowed shores, the kind of place that could swallow your thoughts whole. Ava Wells stood on the porch of her aunt's cabin, the weathered boards creaking under her sneakers, her breath fogging in the early morning chill. The lake churned below, waves slapping the rocks, a rhythm that matched her pulse, steady, restless. Her curls were loose, catching the faint silver of the dawn, her oversized hoodie no match for the wind slicing off the water. She'd been here 3 weeks, writing, breathing, piecing herself back together after walking away from Julian Wolfe. But he was still there, in the lines of her poems, in the ache in her chest when the nights got too still. Inside, the cabin was warm, the wood stove casting a soft glow across the rug where her notebook lay open, a new poem, a woman rising from a storm, her face fierce, unbowed. Ava had named it Reclaim, like the project she'd poured her soul into at the community center. She was finding her way back to herself, but Julian's shadow lingered, his last text etched in her mind. "I'm here when you're ready," she'd replied. "Don't hold your breath." But part of her wondered if he would. A low rumble broke the silence, a car on the gravel drive, headlights cutting through the morning fog. Her heart lurched. No one came out here. Not this early. Not unannounced. She stepped to the porch's edge, squinting, and saw him, Julian, climbing out of a rental SUV, his black coat catching the dawn's gray light. He looked out of place, a city ghost in this untamed world. But his gray eyes found hers, steady, raw, like he'd driven through the night to get here. "What the fuck are you doing here?" Ava called, voice sharp but trembling, hands stuffed in her pockets to hide their shake. He didn't move, just stood by the car, holding a small, worn object, a leather-bound notebook, with still "I rise" carved into the cover. "I'm not here to save you," he said, voice low, rough, carrying over the waves. "I'm here to choose you." He stepped closer, gravel crunching under his boots, and held out the notebook. "This is yours." Ava's throat tightened. She took it, fingers brushing his, the brief contact sparking like a live wire. The notebook was old, scuffed, but beautiful, the kind you'd find in a Harlem bookstore, perfect for her poems. Her breath caught. "You drove all this way for a fucking notebook?" she asked, voice softer, but still guarded. He met her gaze, unflinching. "I drove all this way for you." She stared at him, wind tugging at her hoodie, the lake's roar filling the silence. She wanted to scream, to send him packing, but the rawness in his eyes, open, unguarded, human, made her pause. "Get inside," she said finally, turning toward the door. "You're letting the cold in." The cabin was small, all cedar and faded quilts, firelight casting shadows that danced across the walls. Ava dropped the notebook on the coffee table, hands shaking as she faced him. "You hurt me, Wolf," she said, voice low, steady. "You paid my brother's fees like I was some fucking charity case." "Why should I listen to you now, Julian?" Shed his coat, shirt clinging to his frame, eyes never leaving hers. "Because I fucked up," he said, voice rough, like it was scraped from somewhere deep. "I thought helping meant fixing, but I didn't ask what you needed. I'm learning. Ava, I'm trying to stand still, to let you choose." He paused, jaw tight. "But I can't stop wanting you, and it's tearing me apart." Her chest ached, his words hitting like a tidal wave. She stepped closer, close enough to smell the rain and bourbon on him, close enough to see the faint stubble on his jaw. "You don't get it," she said, voice trembling. "I'm Ava Wells Black, broke, carrying my brother since I was a kid. When you act like I can't handle my own shit, it's like you're erasing me." He didn't flinch, didn't look away. "I see you," he said, voice fierce. "Every damn day. I see you stronger than anyone I've ever known. I fucked up because I was scared of losing you. But I'm here now, asking for a chance to do it right." His hand hovered near her cheek, not touching, waiting. Ava's breath hitched, anger colliding with want, with the part of her that missed him like oxygen. "You don't get to just show up and make this okay," she whispered, voice cracking. He stepped closer, firelight catching the gray in his eyes. "Then tell me to leave," he said, voice low, a challenge. "Say it, and I'm gone." She couldn't, her hands fisted at her sides, body trembling. "Fuck you," she said, more plea than curse. And then she moved, closing the gap, hands grabbing his shirt, pulling him into a kiss that was all fire and desperation, his arms wrapped around her, strong, steady, lifting her slightly as he kissed her back, hard and hungry. Firelight bathed them in gold, shadows merging on the wall, the crackle of the wood stove loud in the small room. Her fingers dug into his shoulders, rough cotton scraping her palms. His hands slid under her hoodie, finding the bare skin of her waist, his touch hot, deliberate, like he was memorizing every curve. The kiss deepened, teeth grazing lips, tongues tangling, a storm of need and forgiveness. The lake roared outside, a steady counterpoint to their ragged breathing. His lips moved to her neck, slow, reverent, each kiss a vow, the faint stubble sending sparks through her. Her hands roamed his chest, unbuttoning his shirt, tracing the hard lines of muscle, the scar below his ribs she'd never asked about. They sank to the rug, wool soft but gritty under her back, grounding her as his hands slid lower, grazing the curve of her hips, denim rough against his palms. Firelight painted her skin in amber, curls spilling across the rug like a crown. His breath was hot against her collarbone, the soft creak of the floor mingling with their uneven breaths. "Don't hide from me," she whispered, pulling him closer, nails raking his back, drawing a low groan that made her pulse race. "I'm not," he murmured, voice barely audible over the fire's crackle, hands pausing, grounding her. "I'm right here." They moved together, not rushed but urgent, each touch a conversation anger, regret, hope. Her body arched into his, craving the way he made her feel seen, whole, enough. The waves outside were a distant roar, the fire's glow a soft cocoon around them. When they stilled, tangled in each other, the stove had burned low, the room soft with dawn's gray light. Ava's head rested on his chest, his heartbeat steady under her ear. "This doesn't fix everything," she whispered, voice raw. "I know," he said, hand tracing slow circles on her back. "But it's a start." Later that morning, they sat on the porch, wrapped in a quilt, the lake stretching endless before them. The air was crisp, smelling of pine and water, the sky a pale blue streaked with clouds. Ava sipped coffee from a chipped mug, bare feet tucked under her. Julian sat beside her, arm brushing hers, silence comfortable but heavy with what came next. "I'm not going back to Chicago yet," she said, voice steady. "I need time here, with my writing, with me." He nodded, eyes on the horizon. "I'll stay as long as you want, or I'll go if you need space." She turned, searching his face. "You can't just drop your whole damn empire." "Wolf, that's not how this works." He met her gaze, unflinching. "My empire's just a thing. You're not. We'll figure it out here, there, wherever." She wanted to argue, to tell him it wasn't that simple, but the way he looked at her like she was the only thing worth fighting for made her pause. "I'm still me," she said, softer. I need to know I'm not just your muse. He took her hand, thumb brushing her knuckles, calluses rough against her skin. You're not a muse, Ava. You're the reason I'm finally awake. The words settled in her chest, warm and heavy. She didn't say she loved him, she wasn't there yet, but she squeezed his hand, a silent agreement to try. Back in Chicago, the fallout was shifting. Jonathan called Julian with an update Evelyn's done. Her article crashed and burned, and her sources ratted her out. She's radioactive now. Julian listened, jaw tight. Good. Keep her away from Ava. But his focus wasn't on Evelyn anymore. It was on the woman beside him, the one who'd cracked his world open. Ava made a move too. She called Lena at the community center, confirming her spot in the next poetry reading. I'm ready, she said, voice stronger than it had been in weeks. Then she emailed a local editor she'd met through Lena, a black woman amplifying marginalized voices. I want to publish, Ava wrote. About the scandal, my poems, who I am. I'm done hiding. The editor replied instantly. Let's make it happen. That afternoon, they walked along the shore, waves lapping at their feet. The sky a riot of orange and purple as the sun sank. Julian's hand brushed hers, voice low. You sure about this? The article, going public? She nodded, eyes on the horizon. I'm not running anymore, but I need you to stand with me, not in front of me. He stopped, turning to face her, wind tugging at his hair. Always, he said, and for the first time, she believed him. The rooftop of the new community art center in Chicago's South Side was a gritty slice of the city, all cracked concrete and fairy lights strung up like they were trying to outshine the skyline. Ava Wells leaned against the railing, her denim jacket loose over a paint-splattered tee, her curls catching the glow from the neon signs below. The air was thick with the smell of fried chicken from a nearby food truck and the faint tang of exhaust, the distant thump of hip-hop mixing with the hum of traffic. Around her neck hung the pendant Julian had given her in Wisconsin, a shard of stained glass, glinting red and gold under the city's pulse. It wasn't a ring, wasn't a promise of forever. But it was theirs, a quiet anchor in a world that never shut the fuck up. Julian Wolfe stood a few feet away, sleeves rolled, boots scuffed from hauling crates for the center's opening. The center was Ava's heart and soul, a converted warehouse where black artists, brown kids, and anyone the world tried to erase could create without being told they didn't belong. Tonight was the grand opening, and the rooftop buzzed with locals, poets, and a few curious reporters, their voices blending with the clink of beer bottles and the sizzle of a grill nearby. Ava turned to him, eyes steady, a half-smile playing on her lips. You're quiet as fuck tonight, she said, voice soft but teasing, her Brooklyn drawl cutting through the noise. Julian stepped closer, arm brushing hers, the faint scent of cedar and bourbon mixing with the city's smoke. Just watching you own this shit, he said, voice low, warm, like he was letting her in on a secret. She laughed, the sound light, free. Don't get all mushy on me. Wolf, I'll kick your ass. His grin was rare, soft, the kind that made her heart skip. I'd pay to see that, he said, hand finding hers, thumb brushing the pendant at her throat. The touch was light, electric, a reminder of how far they'd come from a fucked-up night in a storm, a scandal that nearly broke them, to this, A night where the city felt like theirs. They'd been back in Chicago for 5 months, building something real, not just with each other, but with the world they wanted to live in. The article Ava published through the local editor had gone viral, not for the drama, but for her raw, unapologetic, telling her story as a black woman who'd fought for every damn inch of her life. The comments still came, some hateful, some kind, but she didn't flinch. She'd stood on that rooftop stage an hour ago, in front of a crowd, and read a poem. This place is for us, the ones who've been told we're invisible. We're here, and we're fucking enough. The applause had been thunderous. Cass whooping from the back, her brother Isaiah grinning beside their mom's old friend. Marie, who'd come despite her grief. 5 months ago, they'd left Wisconsin, not as some fairy tale couple, but as 2 people choosing to walk together. Stumbles and all. Ava didn't work for Julian, she'd never be his employee. Instead, she'd taken the editor's offer, turning Reclaim into a platform for poets and writers the world ignored. Julian backed it, not with his name plastered everywhere, but with quiet money, letting her lead. The center was the result. A space where kids wrote poems, where women like Marie told stories through prose, where Ava's words hung on brick walls, unapologetic and proud. At the opening, Cass had pulled her aside, fairy lights casting a warm glow across her braids. "You're a fucking legend," she said, grinning, "but don't let that man steal your light." Ava glanced at Julian, who was helping Isaiah set up a poetry board, his laugh low and real. "He's not stealing," she said, smiling. "He's adding to it." Cass raised an eyebrow. "Damn. Girl, you're gone." Ava didn't deny it, just sipped her beer, the cold glass grounding her. Julian had changed. Not softer, but sharper in the right ways. He listened more, stepped back when she needed space, and cut ties with board members who whispered about optics. His penthouse was gone. He lived in a loft near the center now, with Ava's notebooks on the counter, her sneakers by the door. He still looked for her every night, not out of possession, but because she was his home, the one thing he didn't want to lose. Now, on the rooftop. The crowd had thinned, leaving a few stragglers and the city's hum. Ava leaned against the railing, Julian beside her, shoulders brushing. "You ever think about how fucked up this all started?" she asked, voice soft, eyes on the skyline. One dumb storm, and now, this. He chuckled, warm in the cool air. "Every damn day. Best mistake I never made." She turned, smile fading into something deeper. "You scared the shit out of me, you know, showing up like you could fix my whole life." His hand tightened on hers, voice low. "You scared me too. Still do. You're the first person who made me want to feel." The words hung there, heavy, real. Ava's chest ached, the pendant at her throat catching the light, glinting like a tiny flame. She stepped closer, hands sliding up his chest, worn cotton soft under her palms. "You're still trouble," she murmured, eyes locking with his, a spark in her smile. He leaned in, lips brushing hers. Not a kiss, just a tease, breath warm against her skin. "Good," he said, voice rough. A growl that sent a shiver down her spine. "I like your kind of trouble." Her fingers curled into his shirt, pulling him into a kiss that was slow, deliberate, like they had forever. The city's hum faded, replaced by their soft breathing, the faint clink of the pendant against her collarbone. His hands settled on her hips, steady but hungry, heat seeping through her jeans. The fairy lights above cast a golden glow, turning her skin into a canvas of warmth and shadow. Her lips parted, deepening the kiss, nails grazing his neck, drawing a low hum that made her pulse race. The distant hip-hop pulsed like a heartbeat, the air thick with smoke and summer. They pulled apart, foreheads touching, her breath uneven. His eyes dark with want, but soft with something else, trust, love, maybe both. "We're not done," he said, voice barely a whisper, thumb brushing her jaw. She smiled, fingers lingering on his chest. Damn right we're not. The moment wasn't about heat. Not really. It was about being there, fully. No walls, no secrets. The weeks that followed were a rhythm they carved together. Ava ran the art center, teaching kids to write, curating readings that made Chicago talk. Her article had sparked a movement, with other poets sharing their stories, turning Reclaim into a beacon for those the world tried to erase. She walked into the center every morning, ink on her hands, Isaiah's laughter echoing from a poetry workshop, and felt like she was home. Julian didn't hover. He worked, rebuilt bridges with Marcus, and funded projects that mattered, not for glory, but because Ava had shown him what it meant to give without strings. He'd show up at the center sometimes, sleeves rolled, helping kids edit poems or hauling supplies, his laugh blending with theirs. One night, Cass caught him reading one of Ava's poems aloud, their eyes locked like the world didn't exist. "Okay. He's not bad," Cass admitted, smirking. "But I'm still watching his ass." Isaiah, cleared of his school trouble thanks to a counselor Ava found, started writing his own poems at the center, dreaming of becoming a spoken-word artist. Marie, their mom's friend, joined Ava at the center, her stories of Chicago's Black history woven into every piece she wrote. The family was healing, not because of Julian's money, but because Ava had fought for them, and he'd learned to stand beside her, not in front. One evening, they sat in the center's loft, pizza boxes scattered on a folding table, Cass and Jonathan arguing over the last slice. The room smelled of tomato sauce and coffee, windows open to the Chicago breeze. Ava leaned against Julian, head on his shoulder, his arm draped around her. "You good?" he asked, voice low, just for her. She nodded, fingers tracing the pendant. Better than good. Jonathan raised his beer, grinning. To Ava, for building this fucking masterpiece. Cass clinked her glass. And to Julian, for not fucking it up. The room laughed, and Julian smirked, pulling Ava closer. "I'm trying," he said, lips brushing her hair. Later, as they walked to her apartment, the city alive around them. Ava stopped under a streetlight, its glow casting soft shadows across her face. "You ever think we're crazy for this?" she asked, voice soft. He tucked a curl behind her ear, fingers lingering. "Every damn day. But I'd rather be crazy with you than sane without you." She laughed, standing on her toes to kiss him, the city's hum wrapping around them like a vow. They didn't make grand promises or chase headlines. What they built was quieter, stronger moments stitched by choice. Ava kept writing, her poems shouting truths the world needed. Julian kept building, but now with purpose beyond guilt. And sometimes, when she couldn't sleep, she'd ask. You remember that damn storm? He'd pull her close. Voice a rumble. I remember everything after. The truth wasn't in the scandal or the money. It was in the way he held her hand without gripping too tight. The way she leaned into him without losing herself. They weren't perfect, but they were real. And in a city that broke dreams, that was enough. Hey, if Ava and Julian's wild ride had you hooked, smash that subscribe button to catch more stories like this. Drop a comment below. Where do you think they'll go from here? Let's talk.